Okay, this experiment that I'm doing is to study the effects of Wi-Fi, power lines, electrical cords, electrical wires in your house on can mold grow faster exposed to EMFs? If so, which EMFs? How high of EMF does it have to be? What kind of EMF? So what I did was I got a package of Maltex irregular plates from a laboratory. Using my Anderson equipment, calibrated with the BIOS primary standard digital calibrator and a Vane high vacuum pump, as you'll see in the following video. Collected 10 outside samples. I took some of them and put some of them on top of the Wi-Fi router. I taped some of them to the fuse box. I put some in the living room with an extension cord next to it for the electric fields. I put one on a grounding cloth that basically creates a environment where there's no electric fields. And then I took one outside of town where there's no electric or magnetic field and only a small cell signal. So 5 groups. I measured the magnetic field, with a WF Bell Gauss meter. WF Bell is the world's leading meter manufacturer when it comes to electric and magnetic fields. The electric field's actually measured using a body voltage method, using a multimeter and a ground. You can read my book, Unplugged, How to Find and Get Rid of EMFs in Your House. And then I waited. Ideally, you would wait a week, because it takes a week for Stachybotrys to start showing its head. If you look at 4, 5, 6 days, you won't see the Stachybotrys. So ideally, we have to wait a week. Look in the show notes for exactly what millivolts, what milligauss, the conditions, the measurements that I measured in each location, if you're interested in the number. Fortunately, I'm both an engineer, I've run experiments, and I am a certified microbial consultant. I understand mold and bacteria, and I do this professionally, so I know how to use the equipment. Okay, so I'm going to put one here as a control for no magnetic field and no electric field. And the way I'm going to do that, see how we have only 0.2 millivolts of body voltage, where normally we have 2,000 or 3,000 millivolts, is because this is Velostat cloth. It's conductive cloth, and it's connected to a grounding cable. As we mentioned, put it in the ground so you're grounded. It's very similar to what you would do for a bed sheet cloth, or if you were in if you were building computer chips, if a computer repair shop or something like that, you'd use to ground yourself. So this is basically no electric field control, no electric field. And this one I'm going to spike. So imagine you're sitting at the living room couch, at your table. I'm going to show you what happens just from cords plugged in. So this dish, we're just going to leave in close proximity to an electrical cord, where you can see the voltage on us is 2.5 volts, 2,500 millivolts. And that'll be typical of, that'll give us the extreme. Run an experiment here. So experimentals are, we have the grounding cloth one, which is pretty much 0 if you were sleeping on a grounded cloth or something. This is a couple volts, and those are 2 extremes, 0 to close to 3 volts. The background ambient magnetic field in this house is 1 milligauss. That's not ideal. Well, could be better, but it's 1 milligauss for both conditions. Both conditions in terms of the grounding cloth and the living room table. So 1 milligauss will be our low number for. There's nothing, for magnetic fields. The extreme magnetic field, I'm literally going to duct tape a dish or two to the fuse box. So we have 14 milligauss right now, which is a little high. When the air conditioning comes on, you'll see it really spike. It's summer right now, so when the heater or the air conditioning come on, probably the blower, the compressor for the air conditioner has probably got its own high voltage connection, which isn't going to contribute. It's probably when the blower goes on. So heater, air conditioning is going to be a little higher, but it's going to always be at least 15 to 20 milligauss compared to 1. Okay, I just turned on the air conditioning. See, it goes to 60, 70 milligauss, which reminds me, interesting thing about doing these kind of measurements. When I do them for commercial or residential properties, people thinking of buying a house or just wondering, you know, you measure it one time, it could be low, and then that's not really characteristic of, so you step back a couple feet, it always goes down. Arm's distance is a good rule of thumb. So when people's air conditioners go on in the neighborhood, so you're outside reading this under power lines, you do that in the middle of the day in a residence, it's going to be lower than 5 or 6 o'clock at night when everyone comes home in Phoenix, Arizona, and there's air conditionings on all over the neighborhood. It's going to go up. So, and it's going to stay up there probably all night long in the summer when you're sleeping. So if you're doing an assessment on your house, you really want to do this, you know, morning, middle of the day, weekend, weekday, that kind of thing, to really characterize it and get the full reading. Plate, duct tape to the fuse box, and we are going to leave that for a week. You're going to leave that for all these inner locations for a week, because that's about how long it'll take for the mold to germinate, and then we'll see what grows in each location. I would like to find a location that's 0 milligauss. Not big power lines around here, but actually the closer we get to the street, or somewhere underground here. Underground. Now watch as we take the meter close to the ground. I bet it goes up. Yep. So in the ground, it's on the ground, 23 milligauss. In this other word, it's an innocuous looking street. The new development, it's not the transformer. Underground, there's a lot of unbalanced current on the wires, and it's going to be affecting the whole neighborhood. Literally, if you go in the woods, it's going to be 1 milligauss still. So that's the best we can do. This is not actually really common, by the way, but it is why when you get a house and you get high readings, you should go outside. And if you're buying a house, you should really check it, even if it looks kind of innocuous, for the magnetic fields. Good things to check where you sit a lot, and refrigerators can be sources. Distance goes down within a few feet. Check where you're sitting. Check the bed. Always put it on the head of the bed, because if your wire's behind the wall, check the middle of the bed. See, same as outside. We're not going to get any lower than that. Another trick we do is shut off all the power. We'd still see 0.9 because it's from outside. For the experiment, yes, it would be nice to have a 0 milligauss. Ideally, I would have put some plates outside and left them there for no electricity. Can't do that here. So those of you who are thinking about this, well, if we can't get 0, what's it mean? The fuse box is, 15 to 60. That's pretty high compared to 1. Honestly, 1, some might argue is, or at least 0.5, some level, is more common in most houses. So maybe having the 1 might be nice just to see. I'm just making this up as I speak right now. Compared to if my head was on the fuse box, what's the difference? If I don't see a difference, then magnetic fields, if they are a difference, doesn't matter once they are, how high they are. Maybe I can drive them someplace. Probably what I'll do. I'll find a location with 0. Also, we're going to do 2 of everything, because 1 of everything, too much, especially with onesie twosie mold colonies growing. Was it 5 or 7 or 6 colonies of mold that grew? So we're going to take 2 of everything, and when I take them, I'm going to randomize, like when I collect the actual air samples and put them in places, I'm not going to put the first 2 I collect here and the next 2 there. I'm going to collect all the air samples in the same spot and then randomly choose which ones go where, so that there's no, in terms of what can go wrong or different. That's called randomization. Randomizing, if you ever run an experiment, those of you who run experiments, you randomize things, so you kind of can avoid The results being influenced by something that you don't know what happened. I was wondering why it's 28.3 liters per minute. That's kind of an odd thing, because that, as it turns out, is 1 atmospheric equivalent. An old school microbiology sampling, bacteria, mold. Because if we just use these spore traps, we're not going to be able to tell if a magnetic field affected it. It's just going to capture particles, and those particles are not going to grow. We could leave that next to the fuse box forever. Although actually, I guess you could consider that another study. If you just kept the spores, put them on the fuse box for a month, would they grow or not? The issue with that is it's really tricky to get the spores off of these things accurately. That would have a lot of variability in it. But let's start here. Also confounded in that are the spores you get on this to begin with. Would they even grow, whether you put them next to a fuse box or not? So by doing this, we're starting with stuff that can grow. If it can grow, will the fields affect it? And it's both of these, by the way, use both of these together to test your house for mold. They tell you different things. One's not best than the other. But this is better for what we're trying to assess in this experiment is, does it affect the growth of mold? Does mold grow faster when exposed to Wi-Fi? So I'm gonna also put 2 plates right by the rabbit ears. So side note, I'd like to be full disclosure on even pictures are better in experiments. Show me the picture of what you did. So this is in the closet. Technically, depending on how tired I get of the closet door being open, I may close the door, to which light may be a factor, as well as heat, if you consider the light and heat differences from the other locations. But here's the thought that comes to my mind. If it's mold in our body or mold in a wall, hidden, basically this is for mold you can't see. You're wondering, am I in a house with mold and I can't see the mold, and the mold's growing faster because I'm near power lines or exposed to fields? That mold's in the dark too. Light's not as big a factor as you might think. It's basically all you need to do is get stuff wet. Heat's probably more of a factor. There's gonna be a little bit of heat from this, but not as much as possibly downstairs in the living room, because it's 100 degrees in the summer, and the room temperature, I keep it at about 75, 78 on average. In experiments, what's good to do is just note all this stuff, because if there is no difference, doesn't matter. If there is a difference, for example, if nothing grows next to the Wi-Fi, oh, wow, that's interesting, maybe Wi-Fi is good for us. We might consider that and repeat it. But before we jump to conclusions, who knows? So the way randomization works is I took all these plates, 1, 2, 3, one at a time, and different wind conditions, different variations on the pump, who knows? This is how you make sure that if you literally, we need two samples for each, the velostat, which means you're grounded, the fuse box, the living room table with the electric fields and the Wi-Fi, and then actually find someplace outside. I'm going to drive out of town to a hiking trail and put 2 outside in Mother Nature. Anywho, which 2 do you pick to go where? Ask ChatGPT, give me a list of 10 random numbers using 1 through 10. So in other words, 7 and 2 are going to go together as one package, and 9 and 4 will go, 1 and 6, 10 and 3, you see at least 5 and 8. So now we'll randomly pick one to go in each of these spots. Also, I'm just going to pick one and put one, and we'll start in the living room. Here's a one in the living room. Hello, stat. Wi-Fi. How's that for Wi-Fi exposure? For the fuse box, we want to see what the effect of the mold growing is. Is it different? Is it to go faster or slower exposed to fields? It's got to grow. We're going to leave it here for a week. Now, the issue is then, if I was to send it to the lab once it's grown, you're not supposed to do that, because once they sporulate, then if they're in shipment, those spores are getting fluffed around, and unless it gets to the lab and analyzed the next day, in a couple days, those spores that got shook around from what already grew are going to form more colonies. And by the time the lab analyzes it, those colonies will have been in there too, which is not what we want. Laboratories have SOP, standard operating procedures they're supposed to follow. Over the years, I've actually made sure my lab culture stuff for a week because the Stachybotrys black mold won't even show up sometimes to the 6th or 7th day. 10, 15 years ago, labs used to just go, oh, nothing's grown in 4 or 5 days, let's analyze it. And I used to hold these plates myself from people's houses I analyzed and go, no, wait, can you check that again? Because I've got duplicates, and to me, some started to grow on the 7th day, and they did. So I'll probably have to set up an agreement with them that I'm sending these to you as soon as you get them, analyze them. But the reason that I mention this is back to seeing other people's data and other people's experiments. I mean, if you didn't know they did that and they didn't actually know to ask for it, the one reason why, for example, come to think of it, you might see data, people go, look, it grew more. Now, that's not good data. Or they're not disclosing what they do exactly. Then you get the data and you go, oh, you're right. It does affect how fast mold grew. But one thing about sending these to lab, they're going to be $100 a piece. And I'm already in for $100. Expensive hobby. I might be good for $300, $400, maybe $5. I don't know if I'm good for $1,000 in this. Okay, found some place way outside of town. Put some rocks around it to keep it in shade. I'll come back in a week. It's only been 48 hours. You can see we're getting some spotting of white stuff. And the same thing with the fuse box. A few white colonies. See what I mean by take two of everything? So there's maybe one, big one anyhow. And see on the other one, when you have a couple of them, so 3 or 4. So there's variability, so you average the two. Taped to the wall, when this was taped sideways, what can happen is stuff falls off and cross-colonizes stuff. Day 2 on the electric fields and day 2 on the Wi-Fi. Not sure why we're getting so much condensation here. Maybe because it's hotter. It doesn't feel warm. We're in the dark because I did have the closet closed. So the light's not making a difference. But I do wonder why we are getting condensation. Condensation either means it's humid or it's colder, but it can't be cold enough to condense. I'm gonna have to think about this. The top of the Wi-Fi router is not warm. Wherever my brain works, I'll come up with the answer. It doesn't seem to be affecting the growth plus or minus more or less compared to the other ones. I want to mention something else with the spotting going on here on barely day 3. And that is, we cannot send these to the lab now. Because if we do, during shipping, some of these spores are going to fall off, land in the plate over there. To which, you might go, why don't you just send it to the lab after you collected them? Because then we couldn't leave them exposed to magnetic fields like this compared to samples outside. So we have to do this. What we need to do is bring the lab analyst here, which is what we're going to do. I'm actually a trained analyst. I'm going to use, actually I'm trained better than some of the lab people, but they just do it all day long, so they're great at it. I will show you how we're going to do that, but for now, we're just going to carry on. Sometimes, in the middle of an experiment, you realize, we got to start over from scratch, do things better, different, work out the bugs. The reason I'm mentioning this is when you see a study or someone or a comment that says, oh, so-and-so doctor has some plates and he says he did this experiment or he found that when exposed to magnetic fields, mold grew faster, or whatever you hear. It's the details that count. Read the abstract, read the experimental design. Don't just look at the title, EMFs affect mold. I'm not saying they don't yet. I'm just saying I read a lot of nonsense, and when I dig deep, it's still nonsense. I'm open-minded. I'd love to see the studies that are we really have some good data and document how the design of experiment's done. It's day 3. It's been 72 hours. These are the plates that are shielded from electric fields. Kind of look a little similar. And those are fast growers. Kind of whatever was in the air that day when I was doing the samples. Unfortunately, we got some fast growers, meaning the downside is that's going to grow out. And if it overgrows the plate before the Stachybotrys can start, like a week from now, then we won't be able to see any. Some of the small one, like the little white one, that's probably yeast. The living room one exposed to the electric cord. Interestingly enough, it does look a little different. It looks like there's more of the Aspergillus penicillin spotting out, and not so much the big fuzz. Like the electric field's making them sharper and maybe helping with that. This is way out there speculative, but those green ones are probably either Aspergillus or penicillin, and we don't see any of those in the other plate yet. These are randomized, so interesting. And the ones by the fuse box. Well, there's hardly anything growing in that one. This is magnetic field. The living room was electric, this is magnetic. Not so many green ones here. We're gonna have to identify these. Here's why we take 2 samples, completely random samples, only one versus, what is that, 10? I mean, if we only had this one, I'm certainly gonna draw a much different conclusion than if we only have this one. That's just the random nature of doing air sampling at any moment given time. 2 is the minimum of anything I ever take on any kind of investigation. But these definitely look different too. A little too early to speculate, but I mean, white and white versus the living room, we got a few greens. The only other variable would be temperature versus the living room, which, I mean, this is not really in the sun, and the other one's not really, the ones that are shielded are not. So I don't know if temperature is a really big factor. Light, but light's not actually a big factor, as we see with the Wi-Fi in the closet. It's dark and it's still growing. Okay, into the closet with the Wi-Fi. Everyone needs one of those. It's a $5,000, it's one of the old school microscopes. Okay, Wi-Fi. Look at this condensation. I moved them from right on top of the unit. Still plenty of Wi-Fi signal, because I wondered if it was heat causing the condensation. Or one theory I had, it's really crazy, is anything's possible. Run the experiment. If I put them in the middle, are they getting radiated so much that there's heat that I can't feel? But there's heat? I don't think so, because I moved them. We still have this condensation going on. In terms of what's growing, I have to take the lid off to see a few. I can't really say that off the top I see a big difference. I'll probably put these back up here because I don't think that's the reason there's condensation. This could be a little cooler in this closet, but not much. The main difference I see is there's really, it seems just off the cuff, slower growth when it's shielded, grounded. Grounded is the right word, it's not shielded, it's grounded. From electric fields. No difference with the magnetic field. And the electric field possibly seems to be making more penicillin aspergillus, really tight colonies. This is really speculative, so we'll see. It's only day 3, 72 hours. I'm kind of surprised at how much has already grown in 72 hours. Normally it takes at least 72 before anything spots. Maybe it was a windy day, or got a lot of stuff in the samples, or don't really know. That's why we do these experiments, and then that's why we repeat them. If we come up with, whatever we come up with that's interesting, we're really gonna have to repeat it to verify it, which is a lot of work. So end of day 3, we'll come back tomorrow and check it. FYI, if it was that electric fields seem to prefer these aspergillus penicillin growing really tight, recall that the fuse box, the magnetic field, not so much difference. So why that's significant is maybe you don't need to worry about the magnetic field from power lines so much as you need to worry about the electric cords next to your bed. Imagine that was you sleeping at night. The good news about that is this is something you can do something about. If we simply unplug this cord, we would, as in my other video on how to take the voltage on your body, it makes a huge difference. You can cut it in half just by unplugging every cord next to your bed. Nothing's actually turned on and running. This is just plugged into the wall, so this is an unshielded cable, and there's an electric field just from the energy. So if that's the case, which I don't know if it is yet, we're not done with this experiment. But the good news is that that would be something you can change to make a huge difference. And the interesting thing is, if it's true, oh, by the way, recall the Wi-Fi, not as big factor. So you see this stuff on Instagram about how your cell phone's killing you, and that blog on your cell phone could be growing black mold. It appears so far that no, actually that's not a factor. The cell phone's not a factor. The Wi-Fi is not a factor. The fuse box isn't a factor. These cords, which are the most overlooked thing, it seems to me, if you read about all this cell phone stuff, and this is something you can do something about. I mean, it's hard to put your phone down, turn it off. Doesn't make a difference anyhow. Sometimes it's really off. You can unplug this stuff next to your bed. Also, not worry about all the other stuff. Move on with your life. Get a good night's sleep and not stress so much about the whole concept of, what's bad for you, what's good for you, what's true, what's not true. Okay, end of day 2, end of 72 hours, we'll see by the end of this experiment if this is just random chance, because it might be. In which case, none of it makes a real difference. Still haven't seen the outside one. The one I took outside, I had to drive kind of out of town to get away from power lines and to get away from my house, power lines, electric, everything. So it's sitting outside happy in nature, and I'll have to go drive out. It's an hour away and see. A little comment again on why we might see a few green ones. And this is why, again, you do too. This could be from one organism, technically. What happens when you take an air sample, spores are chained together, floating through space outside. And the wind pulls them apart, kind of like a dandelion in the wind. But sometimes a few of them stick together, then they're really, really small. And when that happens, when they come through the impactor, that jet force could break them up and distribute them separately. So technically it's one. This actually happens a lot in spore traps. It's the reason you see variability in spore traps, and the reason you get false positives in spore traps, because you go, oh, look, we have mold, and you do it again, you don't find anything. It's because you sucked in one big clump of stuff and it blew up, and it's not what you think it is. While it's on the top of my head, I wondered if it could be heat from electricity, but no power's running, no current's running. And so this is not going to be warm, no current's flowing. If we think this is significant, this electric field stuff, we would just repeat the whole experiment, this time just the focus on repeat this versus the grounding and outside and no electric field. The interesting thing to note here with the fuse box, why is it only 0.8 volts, 800 millivolts in front of the fuse box, versus at the living room table, we're going to have almost 3 volts on us just from that little electric cord. At first I'm going to check my equipment, check the grounds connected, check your meter, everything else. And then I realized that maybe you all did already, you're electricians out there. The fuse box, the metal's grounded. So even though there's a whole bunch of wires in there, unlike magnetic fields, so magnetic fields you can't really shield next to putting them in, not just a Faraday cage box, but something made out of a material that blocks magnetic fields. Electric fields are really easy. This is the beautiful thing about doing this experiment. You can easily shield that little cord. can't shield magnetic fields. So what's happening is, since the metal box is connected to the ground, it's literally a shield. So that 900 millivolts, 800 millivolts, that's from wires in the wall elsewhere. And probably that electrical, probably a little switch right there. For example, it's going up a little bit, but not from the fuse box. I had not actually, when I started this experiment, we're on day 4, measured the electric field here, because I just assumed, well, it's going to be big. We'll buy the fuse box, but I really only care about the magnetic field. It's going to be big. I know that. It's easy to measure. I'd say one thing I'm starting to come to the conclusion with all these different readings I'm taking everywhere. It's pretty much impossible to get away from either electric, magnetic, RF, Wi-Fi, cellular. I mean, I really do appreciate the idea that cellular is not good and I can feel my phone if I put it up to my head, so I don't. But the fact is, I can't go anywhere without being haphazardly exposed to an up or down or change in some type of field, which is probably why they say it's hard to prove that this stuff causes biological health effects or cancer. Unless you live next to a power station transformer with a huge magnetic field, get brain cancer. Brain cancer is about the only thing you can really connect the dots directly to. A magnetic field from electric power, brain cancer. But you can't really get away from it either. You can do your best. Unplug the cords at night next to the bed. You can do that. So all this stuff's made me think about, well, for in the soup of EMFs. Made me think of some of my sensitive clients, electromagnetically sensitive. What's really happening, because it's all not good. It reminds me of when I interviewed Dr. Alan Hedge years ago about commercial buildings, sick building syndrome. And he's like, we have data, we did a lot of studies on, it's like when there's a cement truck going by and you get used to that, so we fix it. You complain about it, so we fix it, the noise. And then you start noticing the hammer and the construction going on. And you get rid of that, you start noticing the dripping of the faucet. It's all stress. It's just your body notices something when your body basically gets used to something. And it's not because it's good for it, but it gets used to it. And then when some other mosquito comes in that, flying around that's a nuisance, you notice it. It's all not good for you. But it's not really the mosquito that's the problem. Everything's affecting us. Maybe that's helpful because maybe it's not actually, quote, affecting your health any more than you think it is in terms of the fields and the frequencies, so much as it's stressing you because you're noticing it. I'm not saying that's okay, but on the good side, it means it's not possibly as bad for you as you think it is. It's all not good for you. And it's nice to get rid of because you want to get rid of the noise. I think we're on day 3, midday 3. There are some green ones showing up in the grounded one, on the grounded cloth. And that big fuzzy white one I thought originally was just white fuzz. It's green. It's like the horse race. So-and-so just made another, took over, and the other like back and forth. Which reminds me of something I wanted to make comment on. There's so many variables, because the idea comes to me like, oh, was it because it's on a chair, because it's grounded, because it's in the living room by the fuse box, whatever. There's so many other variables. This is why I say don't even try to predict this stuff. Just test your home for mold. Don't try to guess. Reminds me of the time I tried to grow mold on purpose for an experiment, and I really wanted the Stachybotrys. It turned out I couldn't grow it if I tried outside with drywall in the rain, hosing it down. It grew black mold, but it was Alternaria mold. Didn't need Alternaria, I needed Stachybotrys. I couldn't do it, and I never really could figure out why. Gypsum board, wet. I don't know, was it outside instead of inside? Was it the temperature? These are not that black and white. The only thing we know for sure, give it time, give it something to eat, keep it wet, mold will grow. I'm not done with this experiment yet. Just noticed that we are getting some of the green ones in the one that's grounded as well, compared to the ones with the electrical cord. Now, it does seem like we still have something going on here more different. I'm just gonna have to wait and see. Fuse box, long as we're at it. Not too much going on that one at all. That probably comes down to the variability of capturing, is my guess, at that moment in time. Now, it is a good sample, see from the dimples? That's one thing I check with the plates, if you ever do this. Outside air was injected onto that, and it's why I randomized. So this was the 10th plate, and this was the 3rd plate out of 10 that we took samples on. As long as we're at it, I know it's only been a few hours. Is that condensation? But it actually appears we have the green ones growing here too. Might not be that much difference between everything. There might not be that much difference because we're all inside. And even if we're outside, underground power lines. But we've got to go see that one in nature. The one literally outside of town by 30 minutes where there's no power lines. It'd be interesting to see what that one looks like a week from now. You know, here's a good question, food for thought. I'm sure I'll figure it out while I'm looking at my textbook, think about it. We got some green molds there, small ones, big ones. Why do some grow faster or show up later or sooner or later than the other ones? Is it different species? Technically, I mean, we're all different, right? Even mold spores. The reason I bring this up is when you read about these other studies that, oh, we took the shielding off and all of a sudden mold started to show up. There's a lot of variables in just how fast it takes something to grow. So, I mean, pretty much you want to do this properly, you have to start with a standard, meaning by a standard that's pure species of a pure known concentration. These things you do, you know, in the office, you're kind of imperfect that way. And in the end, this is kind of what we're talking about. We're in the office, we're in a living space. What I can do, and I probably will do, just because I'm so curious and I have a microscope, I may try to identify those species and see, verify at least they're different species. Send me your comments and put your comments in the comments section for this video or this podcast. I'd love to hear some questions like, what if you did this, or did you do that, or have you considered that? It makes us all think better and question science and studies we read, and when we just assume for a fact something we read when it's not exactly as you may have thought, just cursory reading or cursory article header. A quick update on the living room one with the electric field, the electric cord. So while earlier I thought, oh look, we got a couple green ones and a couple green ones, they're very similar. They're actually quite different. That one's green. This one has 2 black ones, but it's not the stocky botchers. So the electric fields might not be as the thing like we thought it might be. Okay, starting day 5 here, been 4 days. See how sometimes one fuzzy colony takes over the plate. There's a couple green ones, and kind of looks similar here. The black one, not the black mold, we talked about that yesterday. And then with the one on the extension cord, it does look kind of different. 4 prominent green ones, but here we have actually kind of the opposite. We have 2 black ones that look similar to the other one that's neutral. So no difference, really, just random in my opinion. And here on beginning of day 5, by the fuse box, a couple green ones, one of those white fuzzy ones. And just when you might think, okay, that's maybe more slightly, those are probably yeast, that's a yeast there. On the other one we have nada. It's just random chance. Which is why you need 2 samples, or usually more samples than 2. I don't see anything jumping out that's clearly, absolutely, positively different in both compared to the other ones, but rolling the beginning of day 5 into day 4, so we have still 3 more days. And lastly, our Wi-Fi's. Still got the condensation. Looks like 2 green ones. And one big one taking over the plate. That looks kind of like our, I keep saying this black one, don't take that the wrong way. When we're done, That could be Alternaria. When we're done, we're going to actually look at those under the microscope, see what kind of mold they are. A few of them. Can't do every kind of mold, but we're going to grab a couple green ones and a couple black ones when we're done. Because it's only by looking at it under the microscope that you can really be sure, oh, it's that kind of mold. And the beach ball there, that's in case I want to play volleyball while I'm doing a mold inspection. Actually, I broke my hip in half rock climbing. There's a plate in it, so that's for physical therapy. Squeeze the ball, if you're wondering, before I crawl into a crawl space or an attic. As we get closer to the end of this experiment, the simple idea occurred to me is why people might think mold grows faster exposed to EMFs. It depends on what kind of mold you capture, because the fact is different molds grow at different rates. That's textbook. And it's a fact that you can identify molds based on how far out they are at certain times in the growth cycle, as well as the color on the front and the back. They change colors on the front and the back as time goes. But more important, you can really identify some molds based on how big they are at certain timelines. So perhaps what's happened is that variable is what people observed more than the presence of an electromagnetic field. I don't think you're going to find an experiment that has been designed well. It's like saying that we took a group of Serbians, Slavic people, speaking for myself, a tall white basketball player. My dad was, I think, 6'4", 6'5". And we took some Filipinos from Southeast Asia, and we started them off as children, exposed the Serbians, the Slavics, to electromagnetic fields, and the Slovenians grew faster as children. That's just how they grow faster. They grew taller. If you had a control group, you just didn't grow a plate exposed to EMS, but you had both groups not exposed and compared it to both groups exposed. And you said that the Serbians who were not exposed did not grow as fast, and the Filipinos not exposed did not grow as fast, both. Then we get some reasonable conclusion. But just to say, see molds grow faster. Use your imagination to ask good questions. Then ask the people that perform the experiments or the experts to explain it. Let's use mold, for example. The Serbians, the Filipinos. I don't watch basketball. You guys know who's the fast Filipino stars. They're good because they're fast. Just because they're small doesn't mean they're not good. They can't. Some of them can't play the game. So what if the growth rate, how fast mold grows, totally hypothetical, but you can't say it's not possible. What if it's like when the farmer uses pesticides, now your fruits or vegetables actually theoretically grow too fast, too big, don't have as dense of nutrients in them. So what if it's even more true? Mold grows faster when exposed to EMFs, but the big stuff's less toxic than the small stuff. How would you know that? This is the thing about the Klinghardt video, where he automatically jumps to not only did he do the experiment incorrectly, where he thinks he saw more stuff grow, says, oh, there were 600 times more mycotoxins produced. He didn't measure the mycotoxins. That's an extrapolation. Molds that are growing fast and happy don't even make mycotoxins. But what if? Leads you down the wrong track, especially if you're sick and trying to get well again. Now you're panicking because you think mold grows faster in your house because you live near power lines or you have a cell phone. Okay, we're on day 6. Tomorrow's the end of this experiment. Can you tell a clear difference between samples? Looks to me like there's not much there. One big colony overgrew everything there. We have a problem in terms of this experiment, but it's kind of interesting. It's all good. Depending on how you turn things, things might look black, dark brown, or green. The trouble with going by color is, if I go, okay, there's 2 black ones, 1 green one, 1 yellow one. Statistically, especially if you plug that into ChatGPT and ask for some statistical differences, it sounds like it would work, but it won't, because you're making it sound like all the green ones are from the same species, and we have no idea what species they are. There's 70,000 kinds of different mold, and a lot of them can breed the same colors. So color alone is probably not going to work, and I asked ChatGPT, how many samples would I need to do if I did it off color? and it would be 40 of each condition. We'd have to do 200 plates if we were going to do it on condition. Even then, it's kind of hokey. We really need to have a lab analyze them. Trouble is, we can't put it in the mail now because then they'll go shook up and overgrown by the time it gets here and so forth. It does make me question when these go to a lab what conditions they are. Incubated in, the incubator is going to have a magnetic field, an electric field, and so forth. But they're all the samples, when you're doing that, sending stuff to a lab, comparing inside, outside samples to see if there's mold in your house. All those samples are exposed to the same condition. If the idea is certain types of mold grow faster or slower, exposed to certain magnetic fields, that would affect the results of sending it to a lab too. I think I'm going to have to actually, we only have 10 plates, put on my respirator and actually start pulling tape lifts off each of these. This is how they do it at the lab. They literally tease spores off every single colony to identify it. It's a painstaking amount of work. So maybe that's what we need to start doing tomorrow on day 7. Try to get some better data. Otherwise, eyeballing it, we can make some conclusions, but they're not the best conclusions. What I would, interesting thing, when I put into ChatGPT, originally black, it must have thought Stachybotrys. Then I said, well, it could be Alternaria. And he goes, oh, Alternaria is an allergenic and toxigenic species too. This could explain blah, blah, blah. It's the ChatGPT has been brainwashed with where to get stuff off the internet from. It's helpful, but it's also not as helpful as I thought for asking questions. It can do statistics if you give it statistics, but when you ask it to think about something, its thought process is based on pre-assumed assumptions it's making in the back end that you can't see, that are based on what it scrubs the internet on to help it figure stuff out. So if you really didn't know what was going on and you took that as an answer verbatim, you go, oh, I got it from AI. Well, it's not really that intelligent. It's just basing it on what other people wrote on the internet. Okay, here's the outside ones. Looks like that condensation thing going on here too. And looks like you got some green ones showing up. Kind of healthy looking too, and very few of them. Maybe less of them. We have plenty of light here. Maybe not as warm, or maybe warmer. There's another condition going on besides the EMFs. In terms of the types of mold, seems to me outside one, that is, hard for you guys to see this, a black colored one. Outside actually has one black one too. So except that I'm not saying that is the black mold, it's just black mold. And I think it's an outside mold. We're gonna go check with the microscope now. Okay, here we are after a week. Can you real quick tell me which ones were outside and which ones were exposed to electric or magnetic fields or Wi-Fi? These two are the grounded cloth ones. Grounded meaning no electric fields and very minimum. These two had the electric fields. Theoretically, it seems more growth. Okay, these two are the ones that were grounded, but they grew fat and healthy anyhow. These two had the electric fields, living room extension cord. These two had the fuse box, with minimum growth here. Seems like average growth there, minimum there. These two are the Wi-Fi, which if you're quick to jump to, that's a black one. We're going to see what kind that is. But even if it is black, over here we only have 2 greens and no black. And over here we have the outside. So it's a few things of everything. I'm going to pull some of these off and look at them under the microscope. It's not going to be fun. Got the microscope. And take these outside, take the lids off, come back under the microscope, look at them. This is not going to be fun. Got the microscope set up. Going to take them outside, take the lids off, get some samples, come back and see what kind of molds. Alright, let's start with the Wi-Fi one, because we got the big black colony of the Wi-Fi. It is not Stachybotrys. It's a cladosporium, common outdoor mold. Now I'm going to look at some of that white stuff that grew on that Wi-Fi plate. Okay, living room electric field. We do have one that's the yellow one. The yellow one is Aspergillus. The black one, one of them is Stachybotrys. It's one for team electric field. That's the extension cord. And the other living room one, that the other black one is an Aspergillus or penicillin type. So hard to tell by the colors, but one of the black ones is some healthy Stachy and some healthy Aspergillus. Following is a summary of an experiment that I did to study whether EMFs, electromagnetic fields, in particular electric fields, magnetic fields, high frequency fields, wireless technologies, does the fuse box in your house magnetic field affect mold growth? Do the electrical wires that you have for your cord, your things that are plugged in affect it? Does Wi-Fi or your cell phone? And how's that compared to if we try to grow mold outside in Mother Nature, like miles from town where there's no power lines in the middle of nowhere and it's zero? And I measured everything. The short answer is no, your cell phone does not help black mold grow. And if anything, it was the lamp cord in the living room, the innocuous looking cord, that does maybe help more mold grow, and the Stachybotrys and the Aspergillus. Mind you, it's just one experiment. It's not a bad experiment. It's randomized and designed reasonably well. But based on that, if you look at it in the video, you'll probably say, yeah, it looks to me like some more green and black mold grew just from the lamp cord compared to everything else. What do you do for that? You unplug the cords next to your bed. Well, grounding might be good for your health. That's where you sleep on a bedcloth or you get some kind of cloth to cover yourself with to protect you from fields. It's also good for the mold. In terms of mold, you want to prevent mold. It's easy. Keep things dry. They get wet, dry it out. Other than that, just forget about any connection between EMFs and mold. Mold grows if things get wet. Interesting fact, though. I once tried to grow mold outside, framed up an 8x4, double-sided 8x4 drywall on both sides. I was trying to build a mock wall outside to hose it down and keep it wet, let it stay out in the rain to grow black mold so that I could do an experiment if it was a wall in somebody's house moldy. I couldn't get Stachybotrys black mold to grow on it. If black mold grew, it was Alternaria and the Cladosporium, outdoor molds. Why didn't Stachybotrys grow on the drywall? Maybe because it was way far away from the house by no electric fields, because my partner wanted that thing nowhere near the house. And we lived in a rural neighborhood on 5 acres where she made sure it's far enough away from the house. Why does it seem like a lamp cord is something as simple as electric fields that are present in a wire that you plug into the wall? Might be a factor. I don't know the answer. In terms of mold, don't water it, it won't grow. That we know for sure. To close, no, your cell phone does not help black mold grow. And if you're concerned about EMFs, proactively would like to do something that supports your health and well-being, just consider unplugging all the stuff next to your bed at night. And if you have questions, reach out to me. If you want to test your home for mold or have an estimate for mold remediation and would like to know if it's any good, it's going to work, I do phone and Zoom consultations. Go to healthyliving.spaces.com. If you found this interesting, listen to my podcast, follow and subscribe to my podcast, the Daniel Stih Podcast, STIH, the Mold Money Podcast, and the Do This, It Works Podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm Daniel Stih. Be well.